What you're hearing is the most important moment in The Pianist. Roman Polanski's film is a masterpiece of storytelling, and it all culminates into one of the greatest scenes in cinema. The 4.5-minute segment manages to capture every emotion Adrian Brody's character has felt till this moment. But the real genius of this scene isn't the visuals, it's the choice of music. This single piece of music, written by composer Frédéric Chopin 200 years ago, is the most important decision in the entire film. But to really understand why, let's take a step back. Władysław Szpilman is a Polish piano player for Warsaw Radio when the Second World War begins. As a Jew living under Nazi occupation, Szpilman and his family are stripped of their humanity until nothing of their past lives remains. Polanski shows us this through the quality of their life, in their clothes, housing, and food. But what isn't so obvious is how music also reflects their situation. Before the war, Szpilman was an extremely respected piano player, but as his situation deteriorates, so does his reputation. First his piano is sold, next he plays in a cafe for Nazi collaborators, and finally he loses the ability to play altogether when he is forced into hiding. But even though he cannot play, the piano continues to influence his life. When his family is taken to a concentration camp, he hides under the piano in the cafe. When he lives secretly in an apartment, he takes solace in the piano being played next door. And when he is driven from that place, he moves to another with a piano. And even though he cannot play out loud, he mimes the actions of playing a piece, symbolizing his determination to remain free. For Szpilman, the piano represents freedom. It is his soul, his ability to resist against the occupiers. But what happens when this too is taken from him? The piano player he takes so much solace in listening to outs him as a Jew once she learns of his presence. And the piano in his second apartment he silently plays is utterly destroyed by a German tank. When we come to the setting of our scene, Szpilman is broken. He walks past the piano in the house in search of food, and finally retreats into the attic to hide again. Finally, German soldiers arrive at the house, and one begins to play the piano. The use of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata here is highly significant, as he became a symbol of Nazi propaganda. During the 1930s and 40s, the Nazis attempted to create an image of German superiority, using artists of the Romantic movement like Beethoven. This can be seen in paintings such as Caspar Friedrich's Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. The figure in this painting, once humbled by the natural world, was reinterpreted to be conquering and assured, dreaming of expanding Germany's borders. But Polanski's choice of music is in defiance of this appropriation. Almost all of the music in The Pianist, including the piece in question, was composed by Frédéric Chopin, a Polish romantic pianist. The Nazis did much to destroy Chopin's image in order to assert their own interpretation of Romanticism. They prevented performances of his music, destroyed a statue of him. Even his preserved heart was removed from the church it had been buried in since 1879, where it remained with an SS officer for much of the war. Chopin had come to symbolize the figurative heart of Poland since his death. And by taking his heart, they aimed to destroy the essence of Poland. But they did this because they were afraid of the power that Chopin held over the Polish people. His music represented their struggle, their will to fight. To conquer Poland, they would have to destroy Chopin. And one piece in particular demonstrated this struggle the most. The piece played in our scene, Chopin's Ballade in G minor. This piece is the story of Poland. It depicts Chopin's nostalgia for his homeland, as Poland was in an uprising against its Russian oppressors. The ballade style is also significant, as it refers to a form of narrative poetry that was typically accompanied by music. These usually follow themes of life and death, which came to encapsulate the Romantic movement. Chopin was inspired by Polish poets during his youth, whose works inspired nationalistic movements. So when Chopin wrote Ballade in G minor, he was translating these revolutionary characters into works of music. Szpilman's own story seems to be coming to an end as a German officer discovers his location. When asked his occupation, he answers, "I was a pianist." The officer asks him to play something, and for a moment, it looks as though he won't be able to. But then he begins to play Chopin's Ballade in G minor. Szpilman likely believed he was going to die after this performance, and so he picks this piece, a tale of life and death, the story of Władysław Szpilman. When the piece begins, it is as if Szpilman is trying to find a voice to tell his story. The dissonance of this introduction creates an environment of loneliness and misery, a perfect embodiment for a narrator who is the last survivor of a horrible tragedy. When considering that the piece is a ballade, the music might accompany a poetic narration of his journey. And that's essentially what this piece is. Spielmann is telling the German officer the story of his life. Next, the piece shifts to a much more somber tone. Two main sections define this part of the piece: the poetic and slow melody and the tragic melancholy of the bass. They come to symbolize the struggle between life and death throughout the film. And this imagery isn't exclusive to the music. It's no coincidence that for much of Spielmann's playing, one hand is illuminated whilst the other is shrouded in darkness. Furthermore, the scene is often framed from the German officer's perspective. In one moment, a heavenly ray of light illuminates Spielmann and the piano, whilst the officer's uniform is shrouded in darkness. We feel the regret of the officer in this scene. The beauty of Spielmann's playing juxtaposes the atrocities that the uniform represents. The atmosphere of this scene is completely breathtaking. In minutes, Spielmann ascends from the lowest point of his life into an almost angelic figure. And then the music explodes. In a flurry of notes, Spielmann delivers the chaos of his life in such spectacular precision. His life is on full display now, every tragedy he's experienced. But as the melody soars, the bass remains grounded. It feels as though Spielmann is trapped between life and death, and when he finishes this piece, he believes he will die. But if he is going to die at this moment, he wants the world to know what happened to him, his family, and the people of Poland. It is an extraordinary performance of the freedom Spielmann thought he had lost. Then, like dying breaths, Spielmann performs explosive runs on the piano before settling back into a slow section. And finally, with his last shouts, the piece ends. But there is no gunshot, and Spielmann lives till the end of the war. There are many aspects that make The Pianist an incredible film, but I like to imagine this scene is the climax of everything Spielmann has lost. Chopin's piece is the perfect accompaniment to this, and no other music can come close to describing these horrors. That's why for me this scene is so important in the film. It embodies Spielmann's freedom through music.